we're going to start with a little bit about who we are and what we do as an organisation. We're Your Consortium. We call ourselves YCL for short, so if I do start abbreviating, I'm referring to us when I say that. We work with a network of incredible partners to deliver high quality transformational programmes that support people to rebuild their lives, develop confidence skills and mainly progress towards the job market. We do offer access to funding. We're not a funder, and that's something that quite often is misunderstood about our organisation. We put together the partnerships and then bid for funding. We manage the expectations of the funders and the requirements of the funders, but we don't actually offer funding ourselves. We work with partners to make sure that you understand the requirements of the funding, and we sort of make sure that we're empowering partners to feel comfortable with delivering funding that maybe you yourselves as organisations wouldn't have access to individually. So it's really our job to empower you and to make you feel like you're able to deliver these projects. We are a highly experienced team who've got years and years of experience doing this and putting together projects and partnerships. Some of our staff team have been with us for sort of 15, 20 years doing this sort of thing. We do have quite a lot of new staff as well, and I think that has certainly brought innovation, and we're doing things a little bit differently than how we used to. We do also offer things like capacity building, so we do work really closely with organisations to improve how you function as an organisation, how you do things like finances, and we will be expanding this offer much more over the next couple of years to make sure that we can best support partners within the third sector. So who are we? We often refer ourselves as the YCL family. We are a really close-knit team, and we all work together, even though we do work on separate projects and I'm sort of solely responsible for community grants. We sort of boost each other up and work together and make sure that this is a safe environment for us all to work in. We're very collaborative. As Joe and Christine are here supporting me today, it's always really good to get support from other places within the organisation. We're a mindful employer, so we're committed to the wellbeing of staff and all of our partners as well. We aim to provide a positive work environment for all. So I do this for my partners by being approachable, hopefully. Partners can come to me with anything and I will just be up for a natter. And we will get work done, but I also like to get to know you as human beings as well, because I think that's really important. So our values are at the heart of what we do. They were chosen by the staff team a couple of years ago now, and we do review them and assess them and make sure that they are exactly how we imagine ourselves and how we want to show up to the world, really. These are our values, so collaborative, fair, mindful, empowering, pioneering and hopeful. And as I said, we do assess these, but we do also hold ourselves accountable to them. So if we're not behaving in that way, we do expect partners to tell us actually, and we do sort of remind each other when we're making decisions about these values. So this is our lovely staff team. So there's currently 15 of us. You will notice that I've put "and Jonah." I was nagging him to send me a photo and he just didn't for today, but I didn't want to leave him out, so I included him there. We're normally based at Chain Lane in Knaresborough, Chain Lane Community Centre, but we've been working at home, as many organisations have, since March 2020. And we've actually found that we've been able to adapt really well to this. At first, it was a bit of a shock, just like it was to everybody, but we've managed to adapt all of our processes and our procedures to make sure that these projects can still continue and we can still offer these funding opportunities out to the sector and support partners in the same way as we always have done. So what is community grants? So it's part of the European Social Fund programme, distributing £2 million in small grants across Humber, York and North Yorkshire. We've been delivering community grants 5 since April 2019, And our final sort of date for projects to finish will be July 2022. Humber Learning Consortium, who we often refer to as HLC, manage the overall contract, so they are the accountable body for this funding. And what that means is a lot of the decisions are made by them. Ultimately, we do have some power within this project, but we don't have the ultimate decision-making power. So we do often have to raise things to them and get answers from them in order to have decisions being made. We manage the York and North Yorkshire pot. So if you are from sort of the Humber region, you would have to apply for funding through them. But if you're from York or North Yorkshire, or that's where you deliver, then you come through us for this funding. So the ultimate aim of this funding is to help unemployed people progress closer towards employment or further education. But to me, that's not what this funding is about. This is absolutely not just an employability programme. That is what the funding aim is, but this project is so much more than that. Partners on this programme transform lives. They do so much more than progress people closer to employment or further education. And we know this because we work really closely with our partners and we see the changes that they bring to people's lives. So as I'm going through this, it might seem that this is about employability. There are targets, there is a lot of paperwork, but at the heart of this funding is transforming lives. It's about making this world a better place for vulnerable people. So are you eligible to apply? If you are a small charity or not-for-profit community organisation, then you should be eligible to apply. So that's charities, KICs, community interest companies, community groups or social enterprises. If you are not one of those things, please feel free to leave if you are a sort of private company. Unfortunately, this is just for the sort of third sector organisations, this funding. And if you have any questions at all about whether you are eligible or not, you can ask me at any point. So in order to be eligible to apply, you need these things in place, and you will be asked to evidence these at the application stage. So that's a bank account in your organisation's name, audited or interdependently examined accounts in your organisation's name. And this is flexible, because if you are a small organisation which is new, so if you've only been delivering for sort of a year, you might not have this, and we can accept a reference instead. A signed and dated governing document, employ less than 20 full-time staff, an annual turnover of £1 million or less for 3 consecutive years. And again, this is flexible. That's a rule that's made by HLC. So we do have a little bit of flexibility on that if you've had a turnover of just slightly over that. You mustn't have a direct funding contract with the ESFA or DWP, and you must have all of the policies, so health and safety, equality and diversity, safeguard and prevent, GDPR policies in place to be able to send to us on application stage. And as I said, if you do have any questions about eligibility, please feel free to ask them now, just to save you sitting through a 45-minute presentation that you actually can't apply for. So about the funding. So as I said, the aim of the funding is to move unemployed people, 18 plus, closer towards employment or further education. How much can you apply for? Grants between £5,000 and £20,000 are available. And what I'll say about this is that if you were going for £5,000 or a smaller amount, you can work with a smaller amount of learners. You can have a shorter project. If you are going for that £20,000, we would expect you to be working with more learner numbers and for a longer period of time normally. Now, I will go through value for money a little bit later in this presentation, and that's something that we are taking really seriously moving forward with applications. So it really is worth thinking and considering how much you can actually work with in terms of your learner numbers and for how long and how many guided learning hours when you're thinking of how much to apply for. So where can I deliver my project? So this is something that has always been this way. So your delivery location postcode must be in York or North Yorkshire. Obviously, a lot of providers are working remotely at the moment, and we are looking for digital and remotely delivered projects in particular. So we do understand that what that might mean is that your home address where you're technically delivering from might not be within those regions. In order to apply for this funding, you will need to have a delivery location postcode of York and North Yorkshire. So what that means is I live in Wetherby. I don't live in York and North Yorkshire, but my office is in Knaresborough. I could put our office address as our delivery location postcode to make sure that we are eligible for the funding. I would be happy for people to do that because this is obviously extraordinary circumstances which we didn't imagine ourselves in, and we do try to be as flexible as possible. This funding is for York and North Yorkshire region, so we do expect most of your learners to come from those districts. So this has been a bit confusing in past rounds, and people have thought that they only are able to work with people within those regions, but that's not actually the case. You can work with people that are just on the border of York and North Yorkshire, as long as it's reasonable. So if I live in Wetherby, as I just said, I live on the border of North Yorkshire, so it would be okay for me to engage with that provision. And what I would say is if you are successful and you do have learners that are just from the border of York and North Yorkshire, you can contact me and I can look at where they're located and just make sure that that's not going to be an issue. But we do expect most of the learners to come from that region, just because that's where this funding is for. So what kind of activities can be funded? We've funded such a wide range of activities through community grants. As you could probably tell from when people were introducing themselves, we have Rural Arts, who are very much about crafting and sort of creating beautiful things, but to move people forward and build confidence. We also have people that are specifically around employability and do job searching and really sort of targeted employment support. We've had projects that are about gardening and reducing social isolation, and training, advice and counselling, mental health support, loads and loads of things. And we really do encourage you to think outside the box. So we welcome new and creative ideas. Obviously, we're under sort of tighter restrictions at the moment, and any project that is delivered within this round has to be realistic. So we wouldn't expect you to be applying for a project that really couldn't be delivered under these current COVID times. You really have to think outside the box, but also make sure that any project you're sort of offering is realistic in the current climate we're in. So remote and digital delivery. So this is something that we are really pushing for this round. We do think that this is the way forward with community grants, particularly where projects have had to stop delivering due to COVID. If this is something that you are planning on offering, that is great, and I really would consider how you're going to engage with the learners while still delivering remote digital learning. If you were planning on putting in an application where you're not focusing on remote and digital learning, I'd really consider putting that in as an aspect of your project, and making sure that you do discuss that in terms of your adaptations that you will make due to COVID if there's any further lockdowns. We had many projects that had to stop delivering or pay the grant money back and or stop at sort of the halfway point over the past 2 years and or past year. And it's not nice actually to be able to have to do that with projects. So we really need to make sure that any project you're applying for can continue through COVID. And that's certainly something that we can talk about in the question and answer bit if you've got any specific questions around COVID adaptations. So I just thought I'd include a little partner case study. This is CJ, he works for Resume Foundation. CJ has actually worked with us across various different projects. He also works for York LGBT Forum, and he always offered face-to-face delivery in the past. That's how they did things, and obviously, like many organisations, they had to adapt last March. They had just literally been awarded the funding when we went into lockdown last year, and they've done an amazing job adapting their provision to suit the current climate. So I'll just read this. So, what digital support are you able to offer? We provide one-to-one support that is tailored to the individual. This typically includes Zoom, Teams, telephone, email, and WhatsApp. Sessions are delivered for as long or as short as agreed with the client in advance. This has enabled screen sharing and working on CVs together and sharing links to jobs online with clients. Additionally, we've been there at more crucial times for some of our vulnerable clients and have been able to refer them for advocacy or other support with partner organisations if required. And this is something that has come out quite a lot actually in this last round of funding, is that actually being able to communicate via Zoom and via telephone and sort of making that a norm has meant that partners have been able to support learners in a different way and in a more sort of personal way actually. So I know that's been really key for CJ. How have the learners found remote learning? Our learners have all engaged well with online support and have provided excellent feedback on how this has helped them. In particular, they appreciate it being at a time that suits them best and using a platform that they can help choose. Are you able to get results by delivering digitally remotely? Definitely. We have virtually hit all of our outcomes with a couple of months left of grant funding. In fact, going digital has enhanced the delivery, and we've embedded this into our ongoing delivery for the future, regardless of whether we meet in person. And this is something that I'm seeing across many organisations actually. We are changing and adapting what we do as a sector actually to be able to support people better and more efficiently. And CJ they've hit all of their outcomes and learner numbers and targets, and they've done a really fab job. So the payment structure for community grants. So community grants is an actual cost contract, which means that you get paid for what you spend on the grant and you have to evidence that spend. If you're successful and we go through negotiations and on signing a contract, you'll receive the first 40% initial payment, and that's 40% of your overall grant amount. You'll then work with your learners and you'll start your projects, and about halfway through, once you've worked with around half of your learners, you will need to put in an interim claim which evidences the first 40% of your grant spend. And you can submit that to us electronically. We are now accepting financial claims electronically, whereas it all was hard copy before. And we can work with you to pull this together if it's something that you're not sure about, or if you've never done financial claims before. Once you've received that interim payment, you will then continue to finish your project, and at the end of your project you will submit a final claim which will pay you for the rest of your spend. So it will pay you your next 30%. And you will have to submit a final claim evidencing all of your spend on the contract. So what items can be funded? We can fund salaried staff costs, tutor fees, admin time, and that's really crucial. I'll go through that later. Room hire, stationery, accreditation, refreshments, which we're seeing much less of now. People are not delivering face-to-face. A percentage of your office costs, and that's something that the percentage needs to reflect the amount that community grants is of your organisation. Up to £1,000 capital, and that can be we're sort of really open with what that can fund actually. Zoom licenses, this is something that often gets asked of us. You can definitely fund Zoom licenses through community grants. The only thing I would say is if it's not only for community grants, you would need to apportion that cost. What cannot be funded? So we can't duplicate provision through community grants. If you are receiving funding through other streams such as ATI or any other funding stream, you can't also claim that through community grants because that would be duplicated provision. Any capital over £1,000, refurbished or second-hand items that have not been specifically used for the project, and that could be, what we sometimes see is people will put laptops in their budgets and then they won't purchase them till the end of the contract. Now that's not claimable because you can't prove that you've used that for the contract. So we do say with any capital costs, purchase them right at the beginning so that you can evidence that you have used them for the project. And we also cannot claim legal costs. So progression targets. These were introduced in Community Grants 5 and they will be put in your contracts. So they are 17% of your learners into employment and 16% of your learners into further education. Now, we fully understand that this is really challenging now. And these progression targets are not paid outcomes, which means that although they will be in your contract, they do not have a financial amount attached to them. So whilst this funding is to move people closer towards further education and employment, and we really want to work to do that because that's what our funding aim is, we do fully understand this is more challenging now, especially the employment outcomes. And we will work with you to try and make sure that you're achieving those, but we do understand that progression targets these days are just really hard to achieve. One thing that we have noticed is that the further education outcome is much easier to obtain. So we really like to see projects that are designed so that when the learner finishes on the course, they're referred to something else that could help them progress into whatever they want to do. So whether that's further learning in a certain health and safety or anything really, it doesn't have to be accredited, just so that that's built in. So we know that that learner will go through that course and then exit into a further education outcome. So the sort of difficulty with progressions is this bit down here. So all progressions must be achieved within 28 days of the learner completing your community grants course. And this has been something that has tripped a lot of providers up actually. It was something that we weren't too clear on the beginning, and we really try and make clear now is that when learners go through the course, they have to complete before they progress. And we will require progression evidence, such as a pay slip or a contract if they go into employment, or an enrolment email or letter, or something just confirming how many guided learning hours or where they're going into education really. There is a whole section on this in the mandatory workshop if you're successful. I don't like to go into too much detail around the evidence requirements during the launch event because I think it's a lot of information for you to take on anyway. But if this is something that you're a little bit worried about in terms of progressing people forward, I'm really happy to have a conversation with you about this before you put in your application. Ultimately, the aim of this funding is to move people closer towards employment or education. So all projects need to have an element of that written in. But as I said, I'm more than happy to discuss this with you if it's something that you're worried about at all. So the admin requirements for ES funding. There are quite a lot of admin requirements, as with all ESF funding. You will be required to do learner paperwork at the start and completion stages of your learner's journey. You will also be required to submit progression evidence, as I just said. You'll have 2 financial claims to do as well, to draw down your interim and your final claim. And project evaluation and audit is maybe less of a sort of demand, but because it is an ESF funded contract, we can be audited at any point, and we do tend to get audited every couple of months, which means that whilst we probably have most of the information that's required, we might also come out to you and ask for something else depending on what the funder wants to see. And then anything else required as part of your project. So you might do further sort of evaluation of your project and your learner's journey that you need to probably consider when you think about applying for this project. The good news is that you can claim all admin time back, and I really, really would recommend you to factor it into your budget. So if you are claiming freelance time, making sure that you have an allocated amount specifically for admin time that you can increase or decrease as the contract goes on, depending on how long it takes you. I really would factor this in because ESF funding does require quite a lot of admin time, as anyone will tell you who's done this contract before. The good thing about this is that we are here to support you though, and I really do support people and try to make this less of a sort of daunting project to be part of, really. So value for money, this is something that we have wanted to really sort of draw attention to in the past couple of rounds. It's something that we need to start taking really seriously when we're putting in our applications. So grants are available between £5,000 and £20,000. And as I mentioned, if you are going for the higher amount, you need to start thinking about what your unit cost per learner is. And the way that you do that is by looking at your total grant amounts and dividing that by the number of learners, and that will give you your unit cost per learner. The recommended amount for this funding is between £400 and £650. So with that, if you were looking to apply for £20,000, you would need to work with roughly around 35 learners in order to sit in that category of sort of good value for money. And I really would encourage you to look at this when you're putting in your application. We spend a lot of time negotiating this amount. We want to make sure that this project is achievable for you. So we do understand that the more learners you work with, the more work that is required on this project. But we also do have a recommended unit cost that comes from the funders that we need to sort of be looking at and taking really seriously. The one thing that does change this slightly is if you have a high number of guided learning hours, so if you're working with your learners for a really large amount of time, you may be able to apply with a slightly higher unit cost. But when I say slightly higher, I mean around £750 to £800. We wouldn't be considering applications where the unit cost is £1,000 or up, like we have in the past, because we just can't do that moving forward, unfortunately. So your application dues. So if you're going to put in an application with us, I would advise that you first check your organisation and your project is eligible. And as I said, if you're not sure about that, please give me a ring or drop me an email and we can certainly work that out. Think about how your project will move learners closer towards employment or education. And this really does need to come across in your application, and we will be looking for projects that are really sort of focusing on this. Read all the guidance documents before starting your application. So for those of you who've looked at the application, you might have also noticed that there were guidance documents to download, and those are created by Humber Learning Consortium around what we want to see in the application. So I really would take some time to look at that. Plan your application before starting. So there is a template that you can use that can be downloaded from our website, which will help you to draft your application beforehand, and I really would do that. When you're working through your application, you will notice that there's the question, and then underneath every question is a set of bullet points. And I really do urge you to pay attention to those bullet points. Make sure that you're answering every single bullet point in the question, because that's how we sort of build the questions. Everything in those bullet points is included. So just make sure that you're answering those. Stick to the word count. So don't go way over and don't be way under. The word counts are there for you to sort of judge whether you're answering the question enough. Make sure that all information included in your application is accurate. So I'm sure you're all fabulous organisations as you are. You don't need to sort of make anything up. We do check to make sure that everything is genuine and authentic submitted in applications. Consider how you will support people remotely or digitally. Now, even if this isn't the main part of your project, we would definitely expect to see this mentioned within your application, and partly because, like I said, paying attention to the bullet points, those digital, how are you going to support people digitally? How are you going to offer blended learning? Are bullet points on every single question. So you really need to be making sure that you're able to offer that, even if that's not your main point of part of support. Include admin time within your budget. So make sure that you're either including it individually as a sort of individual line within your budget, or you're including enough sort of staff time to be able to account for the admin as well. And always contact us. So if you have any questions at all, I am always here for you to talk to. Like everyone, I'm spending a lot of time in Zoom meetings at the moment. So the best way to contact me is probably on email. And then we can always try and arrange a telephone call to discuss anything that you need over the next couple of weeks as you're planning your applications. So application don'ts. Please don't answer any question with "see attached policy" or quoting your policy information. And this is something we seem to say on every launch, and we still seem to see it. So please make sure that with the policy questions, so there is a health and safety, prevent, safeguarding question, make sure that you are really considering those things within your project, and that you're not just sort of ticking the box by putting your policy sort of information in there. Answer the question you wish you'd been asked. So please read the question carefully. Make sure that you really are thinking, what is this asking me? What do I need to include? As I said before, please don't be way under or way over the word count. Don't undersell your organisation or your projects. Assume we know your organisation, and this is a really big one because usually there's quite a lot of people who have worked with us for a really long time. Sorry, just got distracted, just letting someone else in. What that means is sometimes there is quite a lot of assumed knowledge within projects, and I really would try to avoid that. Write your application as if it's someone scoring it who doesn't know who you are, doesn't know what you do, because that might be the case with whoever's scoring your application. Don't ignore your project's value for money. So please use that calculation to work out whether your project is good value for money or not. Don't ignore your progression targets. So whilst I did say they're not paid outcomes, we still need to be working towards moving people forward. Don't forget to sign the declarations. So with the online application, you will have to put 2 people's names. So it will need to be signed by yourselves, but it also will need to be signed by somebody, whether that's on your board or somebody external from your organisation, to verify that the information is accurate. So please remember to make sure that that person signs the application form. Don't miss the application deadline. So the application deadline is the 1st of March. So please don't miss that. So the process. So once you've submitted your application, we will then score your application. We do have 2 weeks booked out to do that. So you will be waiting at least 2 weeks to hear back from us about the outcome of your application. these applications are each scored twice, and the scoring happens sort of separately. So I will be doing it from my home and another person will be doing it from another, and we won't communicate. It's done very fairly and sort of transparently. The application threshold is 45. So we will, if you are under that, unfortunately, we won't be able to take your application forward. If you are successful, you will then be asked to submit some supporting documentation, and that will be things like your accounts, your policy documentation, your salary tool. So we calculate staff costs, which I'd ask you to put together so we get more of an idea of your organisation and how we claim for staff through this. We ask for quite a few documentations at that point, and we will go through like a sifting process to make sure that you are definitely eligible for the funding. We will then moderate your application. So we will do internal moderation, but we also do external moderation. And if there's any applications that we're not quite sure about, they will go to HLC to be moderated. And we'll then give you feedback whether you're unsuccessful or successful. If you are unsuccessful, I am always here for you to talk to, and I really will be open to having a conversation with you about how to improve your application. So what support can we offer you? So this is the final sort of slide for today. So if you put in an application and you're successful, you'll be part of a group of exciting providers delivering transformational provision across York and North Yorkshire. And one thing that we really wanted to do last year, before sort of we went into COVID and lockdown, was we wanted to bring partners together so that you could all network together and learn from each other. We are not the experts within this, actually. We don't deliver face-to-face provision to vulnerable people. And actually, you guys are the experts at that. So we want to create spaces where you can talk about that. And that is something that I am currently working on. So we will be trying to bring providers together to discuss things that matter. You'll get support from application stage through to the end of your contract and beyond from a friendly and approachable programs manager. So that is me on this contract, and I really do take that really seriously. So I will be wanting to support you sort of all the way. ESF funding can be quite complicated, so it's our job to ensure that partners are equipped to understand the requirements of the funding. And this is really what our job is, actually. We really do try to make the information that we receive from the funders accessible for partners. And in this instance, obviously, as well, we have HLC too, and we are the sort of, we do have to make sure that we agree with everything that's being asked of you guys, and we do try to make it as easy as possible, really. So we do offer full training on all learner paperwork and financial claim requirements, and that's not just one session. We might do one session where we do learner paperwork and financial claims, but I am always here. If you're not sure about something, or if you just want to ask me, you always can do. And we'll work alongside you to make sure that everything submitted is eligible, suitable and compliant. So I do check every single piece of learner paperwork that's submitted and every single finance claim. And the finance claims normally are first and second level checked to make sure that they are accurate, and we do always come back and ask for stuff if anything is missing. We always do ask for things in a non-blamey sort of as friendly way as we can, because we don't want this to be a sort of us asking for things that the funders require. We really do work with you to make sure that it's right. And we will support you to successfully deliver your projects and transform lives. And that's something that I'm really keen on. I'm here for support and I want you to succeed. So that is really how I manage. So as I said, the application deadline is Monday the 1st of March at 4 p.m. The application is available on our website alongside guidance documents and templates for you to draft out your application to.